Yeah, well, I hope that people watching this, as well as just, everyday people here in the United States, who viewing what happened and what's happening with the U.S. military, abroad, those 50,000, out of those 50,000, those, for whatever reason, they went over there to operate that equipment, or maybe just to guard over it and sit with it. Whatever it may be, their complicity, whatever their complicity in the dead Iranians that have come from the war. The fact is that it would be, I would hope, people's focus to help with the process, which I'm pretty sure would be underway given everything we just reacted to. You just reacted to, Scott, with the fudging up of these numbers. I mean, it's completely and utter disrespect to the dead and the injured. And I would hope that those who haven't suffered that fate, who are sitting right now, sitting ducks right now in the region, are thinking to themselves, yeah, maybe this isn't something I want to be doing. Maybe this doesn't reflect my values. Maybe this isn't a war that should be fought. And I would hope that people who aren't in the military would be helping with making that argument too, and making that argument more public and more accessible, so that more and more it can become more and more likely that operations like this disastrous operation, are not possible, because ultimately it will come from rank and file, troops themselves refusing to wage wars, refusing to follow these orders that are going to be super important, critical in the years to come, for sure. But anything on this, Scott, before we move on to Russia, Ukraine?
No, I said what I had to say.
Yeah, so Scott, how about you help us with an update on Russia, Ukraine? Because we mentioned a bit about, here's Medusa. We mentioned a bit about the situation when it comes to Ukraine stupidly hitting an Iranian vessels in the Caspian, but Ukraine is still up to its funny business. 400 drones in the last 24 hours supposedly launching at Russia. I'm curious on what your thoughts are on the state of the war now and where it's headed.
Well, again, when we speak of these 400 drones, let's just go back to the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, on June 25th, ordered or announced that he was initiating a 40-day drone war against Russia, using long-range and intermediate-range drones to strike the strategic depth of Russia. The purpose of this was to bring pain to the Russian people, to bring the war home to Russia, in order to get the Russian people to doubt their leadership and put pressure on their leadership to get the Russian leadership to come to the negotiating table. That's the stated objective of this. And so, we're still in the midst of this, 40-day war for at least another couple days. And so this is what you get on almost a daily basis, 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 drones launched every day. And some hit their targets. The vast majority of them, they don't make it. They get shot down before they even get clear of the special military operation. Russia has extensive air defenses up and operating. Others get shot down on the approach to Moscow. And then a handful get through. I mean, look, it's just military math. It doesn't take rocket science. If I'm planning an attack on Moscow and I have Western intelligence services providing me real-time information, I'll take a look at the layout, the air defense layout of Moscow, and I'll pick a seam. And that seam is where you have some gaps, or where you look at where there's overlap, but you count the systems involved, and you say, okay, these guys could shoot down 20, these guys could shoot down 30, that's 50. Let's assume they get 100% hits. I'm sending 80, 30 get through automatically. You don't have to do anything. Automatically 30 get through, and then you just keep doing the math. And so you jam it through until eventually 8 of the 400 get through. And those 8 come in, some get shot down, some strike their targets. And as we talked about earlier, they go pop. That's all that's happening here. They go pop. Nothing's going boom. Pop. Every once in a while they hit a wild berries facility, and they go pop and things catch fire, and Next thing you know, you got a gigantic fire. Maybe the Russians should start investing in halogen fire suppression systems than air defense, because it just seems to me when something goes pop in a wild berries facility, you should be able to compartmentalize that fire as quick as possible and find a way to do that. Hint, hint, hint. Because you're losing an entire facility, and that's but it's bad for the people who had their materials stored in those facilities. It's bad for wild berries as a brand, but it's not crippling Russia. And this is the thing that people need to understand. Nothing Ukraine is doing is crippling Russia. It's causing temporary inconvenience. And even the gas lines, I just talked to Rick Sanchez today, and he was on a drive throughout the Moscow region, and he said there's no lines. No gas lines in Moscow. Gas stations are open. People are buying their gas. You can find gas lines in other places. The closer you get to the front line, or the closer you get to refineries that have been hit. Again, I use the Samara refinery because Gilbert Doctorow singled it out as that the proof positive Russia's lost this war, because a drone hit the Samara refinery. And Samara is, 600 miles, 700 miles away from the front lines. And it means that Russia's defenseless. And it went pop. And it went pop, and there's some flame, and there's some smoke, and people, oh my God, took pictures, and it's the end of the world. Except that within a few hours, the firefighters came in. Just so people understand, I'm trained as a oil field firefighter. I've been to the academy in Nevada. I've put out oil field fires. I know what's required. You shut the valves, you isolate, you come in, shut the valves, foam it down, cool it down, and then replace the damaged equipment, open up the valves, and it's back and running a week and a half later. And that's the fact of it. But if that refinery, one of the tasks is to produce, refined petroleum products, say gasoline, diesel for local consumers, that's why you have refineries where they're at, to supply refined product to local communities. And so I think this one was operated by Rosneft. And that means that the supplies, because, as you produce it, it then gets loaded into trucks or pipelines or storage, and it goes out and gets distributed. Nobody's distributing that anymore. So the gas stations that were supplied by this don't have gas. And guess what happens in that case? Suddenly there's lines of cars saying, we need gas. And of course, the Ukrainian propagandists filmed this and put it out there and say, look, what's happening? Russia, it's a dire strait. Oh my God, it's over for Russia. There's a gas line in Samara. It's over, finished. The Russians are going to surrender, quit. It's done. They find a girl who's going to, make a TikTok video about how bad this is. And they find another person who complains about how bad it is. Come back 3 days later. There ain't no line at that facility. Why? Well, first of all, because the Russian government took a look at that and said, okay, how do you, Rosneft, what were you supplying? They turn to Lukoil or some other manufacturer who has a reserve, and they say, redivert some of your reserves to these stations until Rosneft gets back up and running. And next, the trucks show up, the gas shows up, lines disappear. Wham, bam, done. That's the reality of what's going on right now in Russia. This is the 40-day drone war. It's having zero impact on Russia's ability to survive existentially. The Russian economy is growing. It's thriving. There might be some hiccups, here and there because of fuel, but Russia adapts. Running out of diesel, stop exporting diesel. Solved. Need more diesel? Buy diesel. Solved. And that's what's happening. There's no crisis in Russia right now, strategic crisis. In the areas closer to the front in Crimea, of course, they're being hammered by drones. Kherson, hammered by drones. When I was in Zaporozhye, hammered by drones. Except not so much anymore. Why? It just seems that maybe if you're a Ukrainian drone operator and you're doing things that piss Russia off, you might pay with your life. And that's what's happening. Every day, 80 to 100, probably even more right now, Ukrainian drone operators are being killed by the Russians, who have intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance assets out there, blanketing the facility, looking for signs. When they find it, instantaneous death. That's just the reality right now. The most dangerous job in Ukraine is to be a drone operator, and they're dying in droves. It takes 4 weeks to train you just how to take one off and fly it. It takes another, 6 weeks to get some basic skill set. Then you get deployed to the front. It takes about 6 months before you actually know how to do this thing. And then you're dead and you can't be replaced. And so the attacks are going to taper off. Now, the other thing is the drones that they're using. you know, they're built someplace on parts that are produced someplace, that are supplied someplace, and the Russians they know where they are. Basically, they hit the places that are 100% military associated, as long as they're not too close to civilian locations. But the Russians have been tracking this. They know, for instance, because Ukrainians brag about it, that a lot of the FPV drones are produced with parts made in the homes by Ukrainian housewives. Why do we know this? Because the Ukrainian housewives come out and say, I'm producing drone parts for the Ukrainian war effort in my own home, and I'm working together with my neighbors. And it's a neighborhood effort. The neighborhood is saving Ukraine from the evil Russians, and we're doing a great job, except they're admitting that they're just war criminals because they're basically turning their homes into, no, Russia's not going to blow up every, apartment in Ukraine. But when these parts get brought together in a basement, and they start to use to make drones, and then they get shipped out to a warehouse that might be co-located to a furniture factory. Russia in the past wasn't striking those. Now they are. And so when you see a basement get hit, people go, that's a civilian target. No, it's a drone factory. When they hit a place, they go, that's a furniture factory. Nope, that's a drone factory. Russia's taken the gloves off. They've expanded their target list. And as a result, Ukraine's ability to produce drones is diminishing. At some point in time, they aren't going to have 300 drones. So they can make 100 FPV-1 drones a day. 100. They're finding 300, 400 a day. Understand what you've done is you're eating through the stocks that you've built up. And those stocks are also being eaten up by Russian drone attacks or Russian missile attacks that are blowing them up. At some point in time, Ukraine gets exhausted. Now, yes, they're supposed to be bringing in stuff produced by Germany. Gilbert Doctorow famously talks about the vaunted German drones. Except if you dug in deeper about the specific drones he was talking about, you realize they don't work. The Ukrainians admit, won't use them. Won't use those drones because to use them means you die because there's a failure to launch rate of up to 75%. And you don't want to be standing in the field with a drone with the Russians taking photographs while your drone doesn't launch. And you're just sitting there and then you can run away all you want, but they saw where you run away. They'll kill the drone, they'll kill you. And that's why Ukraine's losing 80 to 100 of them a day. The German drones don't work. The German AI technology doesn't work. America's coming in, selling drones that do work, except those drone factories have been destroyed. If you build the drones outside of Ukraine, you have to bring the drones in, put them someplace in a warehouse. Russia's hitting the warehouses right now. Ukraine's lost this war. It's just a matter of time. Russia's winning this war. Ukraine's lost this war. This is what's happening on the front line. The decision to shift resources to the drones that was made back in January when Fedorov became the defense minister has denied resources to Syrskyi, the former commander of the Ukrainian armed forces, who said, I need resources to build brigades. I need brigades to fill the gap in the lines because the Russians are killing everybody. And, we can go around thump people on the head all we want, bring them together, but we need to bring them together and give them ammunition. We need to give them equipment, et cetera. We don't have any. We need to buy it. We need to train these guys. And you're diverting all our resources is creating problems for me. And so what happened on July 15th, the Ukrainians took a come to Jesus meeting and said, hey, the drone war is not working. The front line's still collapsing, hasn't diverted resources from that. The effort to cut off fuel to the Russian military didn't work. The Russian military continues to advance, and we're getting blown up more than we're blowing them up. It's not a good thing. Maybe we should focus on giving Syrskyi the resources he wanted. Fedorov insisted that he be viable. They fired him. The guy they replaced him with, took the cheap route. He was the guy who, oversaw Operation Spider Web back in June of 2024, was it? 24, 25, 25 maybe. And And, the one where they built the truck, very innovative. I mean, they built the trucks, they built the drone, they stocked them with drones, drove the trucks outside of strategic bases, launched the drones and blew up a bunch of Russian bombers. Good job. Except Russia blew you off the face of the earth for that. But he decided that they're going to expand the war in a clever way to start hitting wildberry facilities, online retailer, burn them to the ground. Lots of really cool videos if you're pro-Ukrainian, the kind of stuff you put up there and say, see, Russia's losing, Russia sucks, we're winning, we're number one. But this prompted Russia to take the gloves off, and they're blowing everything up right now. When winter comes, Ukraine will have no ability to generate heat, no ability to cook with gas. They're going to freeze to death. There will be no ability to have food because all the distribution centers are being destroyed. Their cars will be on the road empty because all the gas stations are being blown up. Russia is totally eradicating the ability to sustain life in Ukraine. And so come winter, there's going to be huge problems for the Ukrainians, huge problems for them. And this is the consequence of making the decision to, attack wild berry factories. I hope the Ukrainians enjoyed the video. Play it again all you can in the wintertime. Hopefully that fire will keep you warm, but you won't be able to play it long because your batteries are going to run out. And this time there is nothing to recharge the battery with, and so you'll be left without communications. That's the status of the war. Russia is winning on all fronts. This is the reality.
So, Scott, then my question to you as we enter the last 5 to 10 minutes here. So why then promote the opposite of this? Why negate these facts? Why do you believe that there are those? You can start from maybe the Western media on down, but there is this narrative that many are adopting, and it's even leaked into suspicion. I'm sure people who follow you, people who follow this show, have been coming with questions. So is this looking now bad for Russia? Have things turned around? Because it is incessant and it is wall to wall. So what are your thoughts on why?
Well, if people want to know why, go to scottritter.com. It'll take you to the Real Scott Ritter Substack page. And in there, you'll see a little bar called The Russia House. And go to the Russia House. It's where I interview prominent Russian figures. And you'll see that I've done a couple interviews with a guy named Andrei Ilnitsky. And Andrei Ilnitsky and I have carried out in-depth conversations about what he calls mental war. Mental war is information war. There it is, the Russia House. And then if you go down to these things, you'll see, keep going, Andrei Ilnitsky right there. Mental War Part 2. That means there was a Mental War Part 1, but that's the second of 2 interviews I did with Andrei Ilnitsky, where he discusses.
Hello, welcome to this special edition.
Sorry about that. Continue. Sorry.
Special edition of this. So, Andrei, came up with mental war. He was interviewed by a Russian military magazine in 2021. At the time, he was a senior advisor to Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, and he described mental war. And then in 2022, he wrote an article and he's been pounding away on it. What is mental war? Mental war is you use information to infect the mind of people. And the goal here is to infect the mind of Russian people. And one way you get it to the Russian people is you echo it from a sounding board, which is the West. So you have people like Gilbert Doctorow come out and say stupid things. I'll give you an example of some of the stupid things he says. And then it gets echoed around in this Western sounding board and projects into Russia, where people hear it and start to believe it. It starts to corrupt their minds. They start to question authority. In September 20th, there's going to be an election at the State Duma. And the goal of the West right now, and the goal of all of this is what's happening, is to have United Russia defeated at the polls. Because if you defeat United Russia, you defeat Vladimir Putin, even though his name's not on the ballot. And it creates the conditions for internal unrest in Russia. People start questioning the leadership of Vladimir Putin. And the goal is to have a Moscow Maidan and bring down the Putin government. This is the dream. This is why they're doing what they're doing. And if you say, well, why Gilbert Doctorow? Scott, hey, in his last interview with Glenn Deason, he admitted that he's a member of the Russian opposition since 2010. Straight up said it. I'm a member of the Russian opposition since about 2010. Thank you, Gilbert. You helped make my case. But one of the things that Gilbert promotes is the concept of Pyrrhic victory. He said, the Russians, because he can't deny the fact that Russia's winning on the front lines. You can't deny that anymore. Nobody's even trying to deny it. Sirsky didn't deny it. Everybody acknowledges Russia's winning. But it's a Pyrrhic victory, you see, because Russia's losing more resources than this. This is the idea. My dogs are even shouting Pyrrhic victory. I don't know what's going on. There's some sort of Pyrrhic undertaking outside my door. Hopefully it's not the FBI kicking down the door, but we'll find out. The point is, I don't know why they're barking. But the Pyrrhic victory. I mean, what's amazing here is that Gilbert Doctorow is a PhD historian, Columbia University. Now, I never got my PhD. I was accepted by Harvard, and then 9/11 happened and all that stuff, and that was the end of that. But I do know that they put a heavy emphasis on historiography, basically your ability to do research, to document, that you don't say things out of the blue, you have to document everything. So if he's going to use a term like a Pyrrhic victory alludes to King Pyrrhus, who fought a battle, 2 battles actually, one in 280 BC, and then in 279. And because BC is reversed, 279, the 279 was the Battle of Acculum against the Romans. And he beat the Romans, beat them badly, except he lost 20% of his men and all of his good commanders. And basically he told, Plutarch, the Greco-Roman historian, quoted him saying, if I have any more victories like this, I'll be lost, which is true. He ended up getting beat because he ran out of men. So there's a reasoning behind the term Pyrrhic victory, but Gilbert Doctorow uses it. And when people hear it, this is mental warfare. When they hear it, they go, Russia's Pyrrhic victory, because Gilbert Doctorow said so. He's a smart Russianist with a PhD in history, and it has to mean something. And what it means is that Russia's getting worn down. Russia's suffering more losses than the Ukrainian. Russia's suffering a Pyrrhic victory. They may be winning at the front line, but they're losing the war. Mental warfare. He planted that idea in people's mind. People ask me, why are you going after Gilbert Doctorow? I'm telling you why just now, because he's full of you-know-what. It's a 100% lie. Pyrrhic victory. There is no Pyrrhic victory. Every standard used to define Pyrrhic victory goes against Ukraine. They're the ones losing men that can't be replaced. Russia is recruiting more manpower than it's losing. Russia's getting stronger. That's the opposite of a Pyrrhic victory. Russian defense industry is functioning not just to sustain the war, but build up a bigger military to deal with NATO. Ukraine's defense industry is obliterated. That's a Pyrrhic victory. Every standard used to define, who's suffering losses that can't be replaced is that. But here's the ultimate irony. It's not a Pyrrhic victory for Ukraine. They're just losing. It's a Russian victory, but you can't acknowledge the Russian victory and achieve your objective of, having united Russia swept at the polls. So you have to find a way to categorize the Russian victory so that it's a defeat. And then he goes on and does things. Because now that he says his Pyrrhic victory, he moves on to his next thing, to misrepresent actual fact, present day fact. Gilbert Doctorow, I was an attendee on a video conference of Russian officials. It was July 10th. They actually had it. It was held in the Russian embassy or in the Russian diplomatic facilities in Vienna, where people came in and talked about the war crimes of Ukraine committed in Kherson district. And among the people who spoke, Rodion Miroshnikov, he's the ambassador at large for war crimes, senior Russian diplomat. Yana Lantrotova, a friend of mine who I've interviewed and met, continue to communicate with. She's the ombudsman for children's rights. Vladimir Saldo, he's the governor of Kherson. I've met him. I've interviewed him. I know him. They spoke, and they talked about the crimes being committed. And these are war crimes. And these are Russian patriots who are speaking. But Gilbert Doctorow, because now he's planted the idea of Pyrrhic victory in the minds, he now reinforces this concept by saying, well, the average person listening would think that this is, an enunciation of the war crimes. What I heard is an admission of defeat by the Russians. They're losing this war because Saldo's words and the words of others imply that Kherson is unlivable right now, unlivable, uninhabitable by the population. This is an admission by Russia that they have lost the war. And most people will say, my God, Gilbert Doctorow, Pyrrhic victory. Gilbert Doctorow said this. It must be so. Go look at the video. That's not what they said at all. I know these people. I've talked to them about this very presentation, and they said, we didn't come close to saying that. We acknowledge that the crimes that are being committed by Ukraine against the population of Kherson has created a tragic situation, and it's a difficult situation. But, the population of Kherson is like the population of Zaporozhye. I was just in Zaporozhye last month while they were being bombarded. They had no electricity. They had no water. Drones were striking vehicles right and left. The highway of death was called a highway of death for a reason. These weren't a defeated people. These were people determined to continue the struggle, to continue the fight. And the people of Kherson are the same way. The people of Crimea are the same way. But this is what Gilbert Doctorow does. This is what the practitioners of mental warfare do. They try to create an impression of defeat. But I'm here to tell you right now, everything they say, Danny, and anybody in your audience can hit me up with a fact. I know the subject inside and out. Every point Doctorow makes is an absolute fundamental lie. And he is perverting concept of truth. His goal through mental warfare is to make you forget your critical thinking skills. the ability to ask questions. You automatically get dumbed down. You buy into a concept, and that concept sucks you away to a fantasy land. And what's the purpose of the fantasy land? To have Russians question the validity of their leadership, so that on September 20th, the United Russia will be swept away. This isn't the first time they've done this, Danny. This was supposed to happen in 2011. Do you remember? When Vladimir Putin was coming back from being prime minister, he's going to become president. Joe Biden went in March 2011 and pleaded with the opposition, Gilbert Doctorow, not to elect Vladimir Putin, to keep him out because it'd be bad for Putin, bad for Russia. That was the goal. That was the objective. They interfered. If you remember, Putin called out Hillary Clinton. He said, stop interfering in the domestic political affairs, because Hillary Clinton was critical of the parliamentary elections because it didn't achieve the result they wanted. It kept United Russia in power, which then opened the door for the swap that allowed Putin to come back in the March 2012 elections. That, past patterns repeat themselves. This is what the Russian opposition does, and this is what they're doing today. Gilbert Doctorow is a self-defined member of the Russian opposition, and he is working with somebody, either willingly or unwillingly, to propagate what is the disinformation that can only be defined as mental warfare. The bad news for Gil is, first of all, the Russians aren't stupid. It may work here in the United States. Everybody in your chat said, they're blowing things up. They're doing great. Oh, screw you. It's not screw you. I'm sorry. Screw Gilbert. It's not true. I'm here to tell you it's just simply not true. It's all a lie. I've been there. I've done it. I got the T-shirt. Come with me. Come and see if you don't believe me. I will bring you and I will show you the truth, but then you have to act on the truth. It's not just going to be casual tourism. If you're going to come, you got to act on it. You got to become an activist for the truth. And if you're not willing to do that, then you don't get to come. But the point is, it's all a fundamental lie. But the bad news for Gil and his people. Did you see what President Putin did yesterday when he spoke to the Duma?
No, I didn't. What did you do?
He was in with the Duma, and he was giving out awards to people. And one of the people he gave a Hero of Russia award to, the Gold Star of Russia, leaned into him and said, Mr. President, be bolder, be bolder. And so Putin got up in front of them and he said, I put a medal on this guy and he told me to be bolder. Do you want me to be bolder? And the Duma shouts out, yes, yes. Do you see what he just did there? You think there's a snowball's chance in hell that Duma is going to go against this president in a time of war, that the Russian people are going to abandon the guy who's winning this war, the Russian? It failed. Putin called it out, and he called out the Russophobes. He called out everything. He said the Russophobes have been seeking to bring us down since the very beginning. The game is over, Gilbert. You're being called out by me, and your cause is being called out by the Russian president, and it will never resonate with the Russian people.
I think that's a great way to conclude this in a strong manner here. Great analysis, Scott, on that. I thought that was very important. All right, everybody. We are here past the hour. So as you saw earlier, I put up Scott's Substack, his website. That's in the video description below, so you can find all of his recent work, including an article about the Odyssey, which I haven't seen yet. So
you got to read that. You got to see the movie. It's one of the best.
I will see it. I've heard it's really good. My wife
went into the movie, went in to hate it because I read everything about DEI and woke and all this, and I was like, I got to see it. I saw it. I came out. It's one of the best movies I've ever seen. It caused me to write this article. I mean, that's how strong the movie was with me. But if I can just make a pitch, I've been given an opportunity for unprecedented access to issues pertaining to Baltic security and Arctic security. If you know anything about Russia and how the West interacts, these are the two hotspots after Ukraine. Even after Ukraine is resolved, there will be issues about the Baltic and there will be issues about the Arctic. The more we understand these issues in the Russian perspective, the better we are to handle the propaganda coming out of the West, about the Russian threats to these. I've been given unprecedented access. That's all I can say at this point. Unprecedented access to both issues pertaining to Baltic security and Arctic security. And I'll be going to Russia in September to follow through on this capability. As I said early on, if you go to skyritter.com and the Substack page, it's free. It's a free subscription. It doesn't cost you a penny. If you subscribe a paid subscription, that basically puts the roof over my house, puts food on the table. That's my salary. These trips are paid for by donations. And your audience has been fantastic, other audience as well. And it's enabled me to do the trip that I did in June and the trip in March and the trip prior to that. There's exactly $32.47 left in my donation account because I used it all to do this last trip in June. It's going to cost a lot of money to make this trip happen, tens of thousands of dollars. This is, as I said, unprecedented opportunity. And I'm hopeful that your audience and others who watch this will say, "Hey, that's what we want. We want to know more about that. This is important." Trust me, the interviews will be big, and the access will be unprecedented. The insights will be unique and valuable. But it can't happen unless there are donations. And so, if you find it, if you like this, hey, just do me a favor. Go to the Russia House and watch some of those interviews. And like I said, Andrei Ilnitsky, Mental War, learn about it, watch this. That didn't happen except for your support. Your donations allowed me to rent the studio, to hire the cameramen, to hire the interpreters, to hire the sound engineers, to hire the editors, to package it up and bring it to you. That costs money, and it ain't cheap. But if you look at that and you say, I learned something from that, that's the value of this. And I can guarantee you that what we're getting ready to do in September and October, you're going to learn something from it. But I need help doing it. I have $30.47 left in my donation fund. So that will get me about 4 steps out the door before I drink a Diet Coke that costs whatever.
Too much now. All right. Yeah, no, totally. Everybody, you heard Scott. Definitely support that kind of work. It's critical that we do. Thanks to everyone who became a new member. I pulled you up earlier. Sorry we didn't get to your question, Memovox, but I believe Scott answered it. And thanks, Sparky, for the super chat on Pete Hegseth and Lindsey Graham's connection. Hit the like button before you go. That helps get more eyes on this. Scott's Substack website is in the video description below, so you can check that out after. And then all the places to support this show are there too. All right, everybody. I'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time with Lawrence Wilkerson and Larry Johnson. So that's July 29th. And I'll see you then, 4 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.